I just got done mowing the grass. Tekking's thirsty. Okay, have you ever gotten sand in your pants? Let's start off with that question. That seems about appropriate to talk about Crocodile's Suna no Mi. It sucks, doesn't it? Getting sand in your pants? I'll tell you something that's worse. You ever walk on the beach with, like, your sneakers on and you get sand in your sneakers? Yeah, you basically have to buy new sneakers after that. That sand is not coming out, you know? Oh, man, I got sand in other places too, but, you know, this is a family show, so, Alright, well, that's really what makes Crocodile's Devil Fruit that terrifying. Just imagine, like, you square up to fight against Crocodile, like, even if you properly prepare, even if you know, like, armament hockey is not gonna protect your shorts from getting a boatload of sand in your crack, okay? It's just, you can have all the armament hockey in the world. Rayleigh could square up against Crocodile, and he would still lose. Because the second, you know, you get the sand in there in every single orifice in your body, you know, you're not gonna want to fight him anymore. You're just gonna be like, I need to go take a shower, and you're gonna walk away, and that's how Crocodile, that's how he became a warlord, that's how he's gonna end up defeating every Yonko, that's how he's gonna basically end up ruling the world. He just hasn't really realized it yet. You know, Crocodile is a very suave, every time I talk about the dude, I always refer to him as like a Bond villain. Ironic, because I've never watched a James Bond movie in my life. I watched like the first 20 minutes of Casino Royale. I didn't really feel it. I don't know if it was the Bond or whatever. You know, he's really convoluted with the plans. He's like, I need to have like a multi-layer, multifaceted plan. I need to sit down at my desk, swirling some wine, manipulating all of the members of my criminal organization in order to rule the world and find Pluton. Crocodile, dude, you don't even need to be that complicated with it, alright? Just walk into Marineford, whip up a sandstorm, and all the Marines are just gonna have to leave. You know, that's just how it goes. Right, so anyway, the Suna no Mi, alright, let's get to it. Alright, the Suna no Mi, the sand fruit. It's really weird I haven't made a video about this yet. Made a few videos about Crocodile, but never about this one. So this was not the first Logia shown in One Piece. That Smoker has that title, but this was the first Logia that Luffy had to deal with. Smoker was sort of like an introduction to Logias at Logtown. It was just like, this was before we even knew Devil Fruits had different classifications. And at that point in the story, Smoker was essentially nigh invincible, because it's like, no matter what Luffy does, you can't punch him, he's made of smoke, how the hell do you beat that guy? Smoker is the most OP character in all of One Piece, or at least he was for a few chapters, you know? For a small amount of time in One Piece, Smoker was the most OP thing that existed, okay? So Luffy manages to get away in that instance. Dragon was there and, you know, stopped Smoker's advances, but so then you have Crocodile, though, that was the main antagonist of the Baroque Works saga, the Alabasta arc, and it's like, okay, well, he's a Logia now, there's nobody coming to save Luffy, you know, Dragon's not gonna show up at the last minute and beat the crap out of Crocodile, although that would have been cool to watch. Luffy has to figure out some way to defeat a Devil Fruit user that can become intangible or turn into an element. How's Luffy gonna do this? Well, it took him 3 tries, so it wasn't something he figured out right away, and at the end of the day, he got really, really, really lucky. Alright, because here's the thing. Some people feel he was introduced a little bit too early in the story. You know, because Crocodile is a really strong character. We see him in Marineford, we saw him standing with the best of them and everything like that, and yet Luffy was able to defeat him without hockey, you know, earlier on in the story, you know? So some people think, you know, well, Crocodile, you know, it would have made more sense to use him later than at that point, you know? And so I came up with a few explanations for this, you know, and one of them basically comes down to the fact that Luffy got lucky and he figured out the natural weakness. Not every Logia has a natural elemental weakness. It's just the fact that Crocodile did, and it happened to be water, and, you know, he's in a desert country, Alabasta, so he probably wasn't worried about it all that much, and then Luffy figured it out pretty much by accident, but with some help from other people and with some ingenuity and everything, utilizing his blood during that final battle in the tomb, he was able to defeat Crocodile. Some people question, because Crocodile, he was already like in his 40s by the time Luffy fought him. He was a member of the Warlords, you know, he wasn't like a fledgling pirate. He'd been doing this for years. So how come he didn't have hockey? That was something else a lot of people bring up. The way I usually try to, I mean, you know, you could try to justify it however way you want, really, but the way I choose to do it is that Crocodile had this line to Luffy where he was explaining his Devil Fruit fruit power. He was basically comparing his devil fruit mastery to Luffy's. And he's talking about how he trained for years and years with his devil fruit, really learning every in and out of it, every facet of his Suna no Mi, to the point where he could reflexively turn himself into sand. So even if he didn't really know an attack was coming, if Crocodile was just walking down the street one day and somebody took out like a sniper rifle and just like, okay, the Croc is in the spot, the Croc is in the spot, repeat, and they fire a shot without even Crocodile being aware, he would be able to reflexively change his body to sand to avoid the bullet, right? So he was going on and on about that, how he was so well trained with his fruit. Meanwhile, Luffy was basically just doing a bunch of parlor tricks with his, it's just like, you're not really doing anything unique with your devil fruit, you're just like doing a bunch of like magic tricks, essentially, just stretching your body, like, okay, I'm gonna punch, but I'm going to stretch my arm when I punch. Then I'm going to have another ability where I throw a flurry of punches and stretch him at the same time. This was like child's play to freaking Crocodile. So the way I look at it is, Crocodile, after consuming the Suna no Mi, he spent like years, decades probably. We don't know exactly when he first consumed his fruit, but he spent like probably every waking day since the time he ate it trying to master it. And for that reason, he had like a really high-spec devil fruit mastery, but he kind of like disregarded other stuff. So he could have used that time or part of that time to maybe pick up hockey and learn that, but instead he just decided to focus all of his energy mastering his devil fruit. And I'd say he did a pretty damn good job at that, right? It does have a natural weakness. Crocodile is aware of said weakness, but like I said, it's not like he dropped a hint to Luffy about what his weakness was. Luffy figured it out, like I said, pretty much by accident. What happened was Crocodile took his hook and impaled Luffy. However, he impaled him through that little container with water, and the water dripped down to Crocodile's arm, and then Luffy just happened to reach up. And keep in mind, Luffy is impaled with a hook at this point, so it's like, Crocodile probably didn't expect him to have that one last moment of like energy to reach up and just grab his freaking wrist. And then at that moment, Luffy realized, I'm actually grabbing his wrist. I'm actually physically holding it and crushing it. So he was able to figure out, like, okay, water. You need water. And then after that, of course, Crocodile, slicked him off the hook, and then he dropped in the desert. And Luffy would have died right there if it wasn't for Robin helping him out. He would have just died. He would have been rotting under the sand right now. I can't really think of any other way he would have been able to be saved. He was poisoned. He was impaled. He was bleeding out pretty bad. Crocodile essentially beat the crap out of Luffy that first fight, all right? Second one he did too, really. The second one is just freak amount of luck on Luffy's part, how he survived the second fight. The first one, at least, Robin saved him. Like, okay, I don't want him to die yet. Maybe he's a Will of D member, maybe, okay? So Robin saved him. The second time is just like Oda being like, okay, he's not gonna die. And he's like, all right, so, right. But anyway, I guess I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I guess I should be talking about what it really does. Because it's a Logia, pretty much the name itself explains mostly what he can do with it. The sand fruit. He can manipulate sand. Now, of course, if he's in a desert, this works, way better, because the sand is already present. But even if he's not in the desert, it doesn't really matter, because his body can literally turn into sand, so he can whip up a sandstorm wherever he is, no matter what the environment. He has a technique called sabbles, which basically creates a tiny little sandstorm right in the palm of his hands, and it just expands out, and it can whip up wind and, other dust and debris in the area. Very much like Gaara from Naruto, he can create more sand just out of the rock and the earth. He can just crush it and make more sand and manipulate that sand. However, the exception there is when Gaara was doing that in Naruto, the sand that he created out of the ground, he didn't have as much good control over it, because it wasn't his own chakra-infused sand. With Crocodile, he has complete mastery over all kinds of sand. So it doesn't matter if it's the sand that comes from his body, or if it's the sand from the desert, or if he takes like a giant boulder and reduces that to sand and then manipulates that. He can manipulate all of it just at will, okay? So very strong devil fruit. Another aspect of it that's even more dangerous than being able to manipulate sand itself, because like I said, getting sand in your shorts, or your shoes, or, creating a blade of sand to slice you up, the basics that you would think of. He also has a technique called Desert Girasol, which, Girasol, that's a fun fun word you don't get to use often. It basically creates a sink trap in the middle of the desert. He could probably, once again, use this anywhere, even if it's like a regular, like, you know, just like a forest floor or like the pavement or something. Might take a little while to activate the ability, but he could still do it after he just reduces it to sand. But in the desert, it's almost immediate. He's just like, desert girasol! Desert sunflower is what the translation is. Crocodile's techniques are all named in Spanish. So then he just like slams his hand on the ground, and then the entire desert just boosh, and then just creates a freaking sink trap, and then in the center there's a hole that just pulls them down. Another move, and we don't really get to, he doesn't utilize this all too much now because he's no longer in the desert, but Crocodile has like a natural sonar whenever he's walking around the desert. Like, he knows what's beneath the sand at all times. So he knows like where underground waterways are, for example, so he can summon a sink trap right above that waterway and suck you down into the desert, okay? He could probably also use it to locate things, like if there's buried treasure in the desert or something, he could just walk into the desert and just, like, use his psychic sonar sand powers and be like, yeah, it's, 300 meters down right over there, and just start digging, or just use his sand powers to lift up the sand, you know? I kind of wanted to see, one of, my favorite jutsus in all of Naruto is, the sand tsunami that Gaara uses, because it's like, oh my god, that's cool. Like, when he was fighting Kimimaro, like, back in the day when I first watched that first run of Naruto, there's that scene where Kimimaro, he busts out of, Gaara's sand coffin, and he's like, that's the last time I'll be caught in your sand. And Gaara's like, oh, okay, alright, cool. Sand tsunami! And it's like, oh my god! Crocodile, dude, you need to do that. Kishi and Oda are friends. You can trade techniques from characters. It's fine. It didn't, I think it was King of Lightning. I think King of Lightning, back in the day, did a crossover battle between Gaara and Crocodile. Yeah, I remember that. That was good. That was good. Oh, man, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna watch some Naruto after this. The video is making me more reminiscent of Gaara's abilities than Crocodile's. You know, okay. Crocodile, no, he does some cool stuff. All right. The other thing that he has that at least Gaara doesn't do is he can dehydrate people. All right, so with his right hand, and it seems to be his right hand specifically, it seems like certain devil fruits will give your hands varying abilities. Like with Crocodile, it's his right hand absorbs all moisture it touches. With the Mane Mane no Mi, which is Mr. 2 Bonclay's ability, it's like he uses his left hand to change back to his regular face. He uses his right hand to switch between faces. Vanderdecken's target devil fruit had like hands used as his ability. So yeah, some devil fruits do that. So whatever he touches with his right hand, the moisture will be absorbed out of it. So he could do this with a person. He has a technique called Desert Prison. That's what that's called. There's a Spanish name for it, but I don't know how to pronounce that. So Desert Prison, where he just grabs somebody, preferably by the neck, because it's cool, but he could grab you anywhere. It's like a virus kind of thing. Like, he could just grab you in the hand, and then slowly your hand would begin to turn into a mummy as all the moisture in your body is just sucked out of it at once. Now, in his second fight with Luffy, he grabbed him by the neck and, like, held him over the palace, like, balcony, and then just, like, sucked out all the moisture and just dropped him, and then and he just crashed on the ground as, like, a mummy. Now, if this was any sort of real-life context, yeah, that would kill you immediately. You know, if you just had all the moisture in your body, like, sucked out of you, like, just... You know, like, it doesn't matter if you go up to somebody and just like, oh, you got the moisture sucked out of you. That sucks. And then just pour water on them and then just spring back to life. That's not how that works, okay? So, now, this is manga, it's One Piece, so in the context of the manga, even if you're reduced to just a husk on the ground, all emaciated, like, and you can't move anymore, yeah, if you just pick that person up and just toss them in a fountain or a pool, they'll just pop out of the pool like, I am returned to the living, you know, so, okay, fine. This is, oh, then again, it might only be Luffy, because Luffy and the Straw Hats have really weird bodies. Oda even explained this, with the whole, like, oh, I lost a tooth, alright, just give me some milk, glug glug, pop, just a new tooth pops out, like, so, alright, this might just be, like, the fact that Luffy has a very weird anatomy, he was able to do that, alright, but okay. So, it doesn't even have to be, like, a thing that has moisture in it, necessarily, like, you know, obviously humans are full of moisture, animals, plants, plants. Any sort of plant can wither immediately if the Crocodile touches it. But if he touches something that doesn't have moisture, like if he touches a rock or a wooden door or a metal door, it doesn't matter. It will still get reduced to just pure sand at some point. He has an ability called ground death, where he just slams his hand on the ground and then, give it a second, and then the ground, it's just like, it was the palace ground, so it was made out of rock and stone and stuff, just began to crumble and crack underneath it as he's like turning the entire ground into sand. And then he has an upgraded form of that attack where the cracks work like, kind of like a virus, if we're being honest. Like, the ground begins to crack, but also if you're a human or an animal or a plant standing on the ground, like, Crocodile could be like 50 feet away from you, like well on the other side of like a courtyard or something, just puts his hand on the ground and then cracks begin to form, and before you can get away, if the cracks reach you, then the moisture still gets sucked out of your body. Like, it's just like he's all the way over there, but it's still causing you to get drained as well. Like, everything that his hand is touching within, like, I don't know, like the length of a football field or whatever, just immediately the moisture just gets sucked out, all right? Now, there's another utility for his dehydration ability, and it's one that's very handy because, as we stated, his natural weakness is water. Alright, so all Devil Fruit users are weak to water, like we've already established this. The way that all Devil Fruit users are weak, though, is not the same way that Crocodile is weak to it, okay? The only way that water can really afflict a Devil Fruit user is if they're submerged up to a certain point. Alright, if it's raining out, that doesn't affect a Devil Fruit user. If they're taking a shower, that doesn't affect them either. If they were taking a bath, it would. It's completely dependent on, and it doesn't have to be water also. It can be soda, it can be the Cloud Sea, we saw that, which is kind of water, it's a little bit different though. It can be any liquid that is like more than, I would say, around knee length or higher. That's when the Devil Fruit users start to get woozy, and if it's up to like, here and their nipple area, that's when they're just completely drained and they can't move. And if they're completely submerged, then they might just go unconscious and then drown. All right, it doesn't have to be water. It could be orange juice. It doesn't matter. Okay. However, it's not like if somebody if this is the 4Kids dub and they take out like a squirt gun, like a super soaker, and then squirt Luffy with it. It's not like the water's gonna harm him in any way. That was an excuse a lot of people used because in the 4Kids dub, they Photoshop the rifles the Marines used into super soakers, and it pains me to say this, but not only just me, but I had friends that watched the 4Kids dub too growing up, and my friends, at least the 2 friends that I knew that watched it also, one of them came up with the idea, like, well, maybe the reason they're super soakers is so Devil Fruit users, because they're weak to water, or accursed fruit users, because back in it wasn't devil, can't say the devil. But yeah, I guess that made sense to me back when I was like 12, but not now, alright, because if that was the case, like, if that was all it took to, like, damage Devil Fruit users, just hit them with some water, just like splash some bottled water on them and then they're rendered useless, like the Marines would not be having a problem. They'd be like, there would be no Yonko at this point. Well, Shanks would still be a Yonko, but Shanks would be the only Yonko, you know what I mean? So okay though. The way that it works with Crocodile is like that example I gave. Like, if you took out a Super Soaker and just and then shot Crocodile with the Super Soaker, and the water managed to hit him, then he can't turn that area that's moist into sand anymore. So you splatter some water on his chest, and if you react fast enough and you take your fist and you just punch him right where you squirted him, it'll actually hurt him. He cannot turn that part into sand. Okay, that's how Luffy figured it out. Now, because he has a natural ability to absorb moisture, you have to react really quick to this, okay? Because if you splash him with water, all he needs to do is like, done. He has like an instant drying tool, alright? So it's not something that's just like, you can't just assume, oh, because I figured out his weakness is water, I could defeat him now. And he's like, well, you have a better chance, if you can take him by surprise and you can, splash water all over your body like Luffy did, and you can get, like, one really good solid hit off on him. Like, if you can open it up with, like, a ridiculously strong punch and slam him right in his face and have him get knocked out from that attack, Sure. Yeah, you could take him out in one shot. You better aim well. It's just like that scene with Blue and O when Luffy went Gear second, like, aim well and try to hit me. It's basically like that, all right? Now, Luffy took it to the next level with his Devil Fruit powers. He took an entire barrel of water and drank the whole thing and became Mizu Luffy, which is Luffy's third strongest form, right behind Gear 4th and Afro Luffy, okay? So, Water Luffy, who unfortunately we really haven't seen much since that battle, and then it doesn't matter though, like, Crocodile can absorb as much moisture as he has to, so even when he's like Water Luffy and he's covered, his belly is like sticking out from all the water he absorbed, he just, Crocodile just grabs him and just sucks it all out. Doesn't matter how much water's in them, and Luffy is eventually reduced to a mummy. However, the way he got out of that second fight was right before he absorbed, or right before Crocodile grabbed him and absorbed the moisture, Luffy fired a water bullet into the sky, like, and then Crocodile grabbed him and then sucked out all the moisture and then dropped him on the ground, plop, like Mummy Luffy. And then Crocodile walks away to go down into the tombs with Robin and Cobra. And then Luffy's like there, can't move, Mummy on death's door basically, but that one piece of water that he's shot up in the air just and landed right where he needed it to. I'm like, alright, I mean, you could say ingenuity on Luffy's part, like shooting up the water as like a trump card in case he can't move after that, but still, it's just like, you fire a glob of water in the air, I don't think it would stay as a glob of water. I think you shoot a glob of water in the air, it goes up high, it would just turn into like a little bit of sprinkles. But who knows, maybe just a little bit of sprinkles hitting Luffy. I mean, it could have hit him over there. The wind could have changed direction and moved it. That's a little, plot armory, but whatever, it's fine. Luffy managed to survive. And then later on, during the final battle in the tomb, he figured out it doesn't have to be water, it can be any liquid. Any liquid that allows, the sand to stick together. That's really what the weakness is. Not necessarily water as a weakness, but any liquid that bunches it together. So in this case, blood also works. So Luffy's in the prison, or in the tomb, covered in blood and punching out Crocodile. In the 4Kids dub, it was sweat, which, okay. I mean, a lot of times I give 4Kids a lot of crap because, like, the edits make no sense, or the changing lines around make no sense. But in this case, blood would work, sweat would work. I mean, you have to be sweating up a factory to make it go. I even think they went extra mile with the 4Kids dub. I think they even said, like, because I'm underground, my rubber skin cannot breathe. So that's why I'm sweating so much. I mean, like, at least they're taking an extra minute or two to explain how this is working, right? Although I think there's even a few scenes in the 4Kids where they forget to edit out the blood because Crocodile's covered it in as well. Like, you get to see it very briefly. But yeah. So during that final battle, though, we get to see some other techniques that he uses. Desert La Spada. And I originally thought it was Desert Espada at first, but he does have another technique called that, Desert Grande Espada. Yami was a Grande Espada. He was a big Espada, wasn't it? Yeah, okay, Bleach reference, there it goes. But no, he has the ability to, like, take all this sand and compress it together to the point where it looks like an actual blade, where it looks like a metal blade made out of sand and compressed together. You could say maybe because there's fragments of, like, metal and stuff in the sand that he can combine them together to make it look like that, but no, I think it's just for artistic license. It's just like, it's so compressed, it's so sharp, this is like one of Crocodile's strongest attack, Desert La Spada! So he does that and creates a blade, and then Luffy uses Gumu Gumu no Storm to just punch right through the blades and then slam into Crocodile and burst him through the tomb, and that's what defeats him. Now, you might also say, because of this weakness to liquid, and there's even an SBS question about this, that was the SBS question where Oda also explains the whole weakness to water, to Devil Fruit users, like how the weakness actually operates and how it's not necessarily just water, it's liquid as well. But he explains, like, yeah, because Crocodile has a natural weakness to water for his Devil Fruit, that means any kind of water, like rain, and even taking a shower, can leave him vulnerable. Now, he also went on to say that Crocodile's not really worried about that, getting attacked in the shower, because I guess he's just had to deal with that for so long, he's used to it, so he's like, well, I'm not going to go without showering, because that wouldn't be very suave of me now, would it? So I imagine he would go into the shower and just dare somebody to attack him. Because once again, it's like, you got one shot, basically. It's like, alright, you attack him when he's in the shower, he can't turn into sand, but you gotta hit him once, because all it takes is for him just to, like, use his right hand, suck up all that moisture immediately, and then you're screwed. He turns the whole bathroom into a sand dungeon. And you do not want to be stuck in Crocodile's sand dungeon, alright? You just don't. He should really he should have a technique that summons, like, a sand crocodile. You know, like, I know it doesn't that is more of, like, a Naruto jutsu kind of thing, but just, like, can you imagine, like, somebody, like, he's fighting in the desert, and then all of a sudden, like, a crocodile's maw just, like that scene in freaking, what is it? The freaking, graboids. Tremors. Yeah, like in Tremors, like a worm or something. You know, like, that would be cool if he had a technique like that. But no, he doesn't. But he could, conceivably. I guess he could do that if he really wanted to, right? So during Marineford, we got to see a few new techniques. We got to see him use Grande Espada. That's the technique he used against Akainu, where Akainu's going after Jinbei, and, you know, Crocodile's like, I'm not... It's not like he was protecting Jinbei. He was, and Luffy. It was just like he was more determined to not let Akainu get what he wanted. So he's just like, oh no, you're not getting it. Same reason why he stopped the execution of Ace. It's not because Crocodile, like, cares for Ace or anything, like, I'll make sure to protect your brother, Straw Hat. No, it's nothing like that. It's just like, I'm not letting the Marines get what they want. I don't really care about Luffy. I'm not caring about his brother or, you know, defeating the Marines for Luffy's sake or anything. I'm just not letting them get what they want to do. So they go to execute Ace, and then Crocodile uses his desert blades to, like, slice the executioners down, and then later on he slices Akainu in half. Of course, it doesn't hurt Akainu. I was also thinking, like, ooh, how would that work? Because he's using sand. You'd think, like, because Akainu generates so much heat with his lava powers, the sand would become, like, glass, like, instantly. Because that's actually a phenomenon that occurs on, like, beaches. Like, if lightning strikes a beach, the epicenter, the spot where the lightning struck, because it's so superheated at that one instance, the sand will actually just turn into glass right then and there. So I thought that would have been kind of cool if Crocodile uses his sand to, like, slice Akainu down in, like, a really fast slicing motion, and then it works. Like, you know, Akainu gets sliced in half. He doesn't hurt him. He could just reform his body, because he's a Logia user as well. But I thought it would be cool to, like, see the sand, like, become glass as, like, Akainu were to brawl with Crocodile or something. We don't get to see that, unfortunately, but I guess it could happen later, right? Let's see, what else can he do? Oh, he did have that, I think it's called, pardon my Spanish, Barjon? Barjon. It's a technique that he used during Impel Down. He summons, like, a scythe blade out of his arm, and he just, like, passes through people with it, and the sand blade doesn't actually cut you. It'll just pass through you, like regular sand, like someone's throwing sand at you, right? But as the scythe blade passes through your body, it sucks out the moisture at the same time. So it's sort of like Ground Secco or Ground Death or the Desert Prison, except it's just a lot faster, and he can afflict a lot more people at once. So it's ideal for fighting groups. So a bunch of prison guards are coming after him. He could just create these, like freaking Crow from Dead Man Wonderland. Just creates these scythe blades out of his hands, or I guess cars from JoJo's. And then just, you know, pass through a bunch of people at once. Because he's a Logia, he can turn his lower body into sand. He can make his lower body into, like, a whirling sandstorm or something, you know, and just, like, pass through a bunch of people really fast and just, like, slice them all down. Even the guards in Impel Down level 4, they were wearing those really thick insulated prisoner guard outfits, you know, protective, like, suits, because to deal with the intense heat, like these super thick insulated suits. And even with that protection, Crocodile's blade was able to pass right through it and just, you know, turn them into zombies immediately, or mummy zombies immediately. So that's another technique he's got there. Beyond that, I mean, just, like, you know, he can pretty much do anything he wants. Like, if he walks into a town, if he really wanted to, he could just reduce that town to a ghost town within the span of a few minutes if he wanted to. So, yeah, he is a really strong character, so don't think of it just like because he was introduced early and because Luffy defeated him, you know, before Haki or anything, that means Crocodile's necessarily weak. And it's been 2 years now. I think Oda wants to introduce him back into the story in a big way at some point, maybe even built up another criminal organization in the New World. I'm pretty sure he would have learned Haki at this point. You know, so Crocodile has observation. You can even think because he trained with his his devil fruit so much to reflexively become sand, maybe that was a prerequisite to learn observation, so maybe it would be really easy for him to learn that now. Armament hockey would be insane. That would be extremely powerful if he had that. Awakening. Now, here's the deal with that. So, most of the time we saw him use his fruit, he was already in a desert kingdom. So the point of an awakened Logia is, I think you can afflict the weather. You can change the weather. Like at Punk Hazard, we had Aokiji and Akainu fight, and that changed the weather permanently, okay? I think if Crocodile was an awakened user at that point, he would have been able to... He wouldn't have had the need for the boogie powder or anything like that. Like, his dehydration abilities, like... If he was an awakened, Crocodile, I feel, would be able to cause a drought on any island, no matter where he was at. Or he could permanently change the weather so it was just a never-ending sandstorm. So I don't think he's awakened back during the time of, Alabasta. Now he could be. Like, he could just walk into a town and just cause a drought just by his presence being there. Or he could just snap his fingers and the whole, like, the houses and everything just become sand immediately. That's another Bleach reference. That's Ganshu Seppa. Become sand! Now! And then, there you go. So, yeah, he might be an awakened now. Like I said, he's been training with his fruit for a long time. And now he might be training with hockey a little bit. Armament, also just picture the sand blades but covered in hockey. And then they would probably cut you while draining your moisture out of you. Like, he would just turn his, arm into just a sand syringe or whatever and stab you, and you would be injured by it, bleeding, but you would also just, suck out all the moisture and the blood and just... And then you would just drop, You wouldn't even be a mummy at that point. You would just be turned to dust, like literal dust, right in front of a crocodile, just by being impaled by that. Sand cutlass, shing, and just becomes sand right in front of even the bones become dust. He would be an extremely OP character if he learned hockey and if you awakened, alright? He was already pretty strong to begin with. And like I said, I think that's the reason Oda kind of explained it away. He's like, yes, Crocodile is an incredibly strong character. Under normal circumstances, Luffy would not be able to defeat Crocodile during this point at Alabasta. So I'm going to have to give him this weakness to kind of counterbalance everything and have just Luffy get a lot of luck on his side in order to make it work. And a lot of people helping him out, like Robin, of course. But if it wasn't for that, in a straight balls-out fight between Crocodile and Luffy, we saw what happened. Luffy lost pretty decisively. And he would have died right there if it wasn't for Robin, okay? So, I don't look at it like that. I don't look at, Crocodile being like, oh, he was defeated too easily by Luffy. I don't think that. I think Oda did it pretty well, and I'm sure he's learned some new tricks since that point, since the time skip. Anyway, let me know what you think about Crocodile's Devil Fruit below, and some new stuff he can learn with it if he awakened or got armament hockey or whatever. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Remember to stay hydrated. And keep sand out of your shorts. It's not a pleasant experience.